Well, this conversation, I think, is one that's going to be a pleasure and very enjoyable because for somebody that has such a versatile background in writing and publishing and talking about different things, to also be deeply enrooted within the Cub Scouts makes for a very interesting conversation, I think.
Boy Scouts too, and Girl Scouts. Yes.
Well, I mean, the more outdoor
And
experience that you have in life, I feel it really broadens the palette that you're painting the picture of where you're trying to go from.
right, right. So, and also I very into the environment, we live right near a park. Our dog's name is Scout, by the way. So we are very motivated. Leave no trace is part of our whole philosophy. Pick up trash, people waste all of that, just people destroying the environment. But that's just like a side thing. And I was an environmental reporter at one point too. But
I think that whole concept of, leave no trace, it's kind of one of those common sense values that within the stream of society and the fast pace that we run at, we kind of overlook and forget. And I really love the fact that we're starting to look at it again and start to kind of drill that back into our core thought process.
definitely. But it's just a side thing. I mean, I was an environmental reporter, so I reported for a number of years for Mother Nature Network, which doesn't exist anymore. It might be Tree Hugger now. I don't even know if that exists anymore. But some of those stories of mine got picked up by Forbes and Huffington Post, some of my biggest publications that I've been in, and I didn't even know I was in them until I Googled myself and saw that I had been picked up by those big publications. I would have never had that opportunity, but they were interested in the stories that we were writing there at Mother Nature Network. Um, so it was Chuck Lavelle was part of that from the Rolling Stones, and it was a long time ago. So I'm a healthcare reporter now. So I don't know if that, I mean, I guess that's healthy lifestyle as works into that whole concept. Clean environment, clean body, clean, you know, I guess there's some kind of a transition from one to the other. I don't know, but I don't like killing bugs. I really am a little bit insane about it. And we do recycle. And it costs more to recycle, by the way.
It does. And actually they do tie together very well.
Okay.
As I've gone along this journey, I've figured out all these like really interesting ways that everything threads together. And with, the leave no trace thing, if you really think about it and you're really conscious of it, you leave something behind, it kind of bugs you a little bit. And then you go out and you get back into the wilderness. You get an opportunity to pick something else up to kind of clean your hands and, do the right thing in regards to the mistake you made before. And that carries over really, really fundamental in life because I know it first with firsthand experience, a lot of the struggles that we encounter along our journey, they come from that idea of shame or that idea of guilt. And we kind of get stuck there. We don't look at a way that we're able to turn around in the cycle and repair that some other way.
So I want to just tell you that my novel that I wrote also has something to do with the environment. In that my grandfather walked across country. The book is based on my grandfather's life, and he walked across countries, and he observed the beauty of nature and that God created for us to enjoy that we often do not take time to notice. But when you're walking across countries to get to freedom, you notice. So there's a lot of that in the book, and there's a lot of guilt too because that My religion is religion tends to be have guilt about things too. Maybe that's God-fearing people. You know, you have to you feel guilty about things that you do that are wrong. So there is a lot of guilt in this novel. But just my grandfather lost all of his family in the Holocaust, most of his family in the Holocaust, but he came here before, so he escaped that by being here, and he had to deal with the guilt of the survivor's guilt of you know, couldn't he have done more? Could he have done more to save them? And what, you know, why, how did this happen? And there, but for the grace of God go I. So maybe in that way, there's environment in even that seeped into my writing of my novel, since it is something that I care deeply about. We back up to a park. I wouldn't move from here because we have a park in our backyard, basically. You know, we walk there. It's part of our lifestyle. I do a lot of walking. And my, you know, my husband's like, "Are we walking tonight?" So we do walk, and in that way, you can observe the beauty of nature. If you just stay inside, which I am now, and a large part of my life is sedentary, but I do enjoy getting out and breathing the air and looking at the stars when they're out. And we were a whole family of campers. Not my favorite thing, by the way, but it was a good experience to go through. I think it's easier for men, just saying, to be in the environment, and to camp out. It's a little harder for us, but we experienced it a family, and we pushed my son as a family, or at least my husband and I pushed him to be an Eagle Scout to get to that point, in the hopes that that might help him in life. And also, I think it taught him a lot about life, and depending on yourself, and just he really enjoys the environment too. He's camped out, he's fished, he comments that there's more trees in Atlanta than there are in LA, although we just went there and I saw trees. So, but he appreciates, I think, the fact that we pushed him so hard to accomplish something like that.
That's one of the things that I really encourage people when I take them out in the field on a hike or, whatever the experience may be, is to really tap in and sit within that adversity, that struggle, or even that simple learning curve, to allow yourself the freedom to embrace it and look around you and see what there is within the environment that can help you to better your situation. And when you start practicing that within what I define as the safest place in the world, the wilderness, because there's none of the judgmental stories or power plays or anything else that we put within the world. You get out there and you start hacking it, and it starts becoming easier and easier. Then you bring it back into the concrete world, and it helps you with all that negativity that flows through the day.
Definitely, definitely. And I have a friend who is very, very into the environment, and is a docent, and brings people on talks about nature in a local nature center near here. And she's just a little upset about what might happen with the environment, and you get into all the other political issues, but I think for the most part, it's just a matter of knowing that God created this universe for us, and how are we destroying it? And just the simple things like picking up after yourself. I mean, it upsets me when people throw their cigarette out the window because they think it's going to decompose and it doesn't. Or, just why can't you take the few extra steps to find a garbage can for your bottles and your plastic that's just sitting out there and destroying my paths. My tranquility is disturbed by the fact that there might be garbage that's just unnecessary because people are a little lazy take it with them, hold on to it a little longer. I'm sure there's a garbage can within a few feet of you, just it upsets me. And yeah, so let's not go off on that tirade,
But
um,
I think again that's a very valid point, when we talk about how we can utilize the outdoors to set a stage for us to improve our way of life and let go of shame and all those other things, is taking that moment to be mindful of, I just drank the last of my water bottle, so instead of throwing it down, let me put it in my pocket or my coat, whatever, until I come across, a proper receptacle. And doing that, it bleeds over, whether we think about it or not. It bleeds over into our daily lives where we start looking at those little minute things that we struggle with. We start building a resistance. We start building an ability to expand and overcome those struggles.
definitely. So I was trying to think how my novel, my writing, anything has to do with just the environment. And I try to observe, I think I'm an observer of life. So I also want to add that so any of that goes into my novel or my writing in general, just to be aware of the senses that are heightened outside. And I always found peace near the ocean, the breathing of the ocean, and we did just spend some time at the ocean and realized, it's going to go on. That in and out, that breath of the waves is going to continue whether we're here or not. And it's just a perpetual process. And so it's good to just sit there and breathe and close your eyes. And I always tell my kids to pray and find a spot outside in nature where you feel God. I think it can be in four walls of a sanctuary per se. If you can find it there, but I find that when I really want to talk to God, I find a a spot that feels godlike to me. And godlike to me is the ocean away from people or in the mountains. When my kids went to camp, my son was struggling. I said, listen, find a spot away from everyone else and talk with God, which is really just talking with yourself, of course, but you can work out so many problems by getting just really releasing from what's going on around you and just it's you, the sun I see shining behind you that looks very godlike right now to me. And there's so much peace that you can find just being within nature and away from everyone else and to just appreciate that moment. I think you can work out a lot of your problems, maybe not the world's problems. Maybe it won't be as fulfilling as it has been for me to find that spirituality in nature. Um, and again, this all seeps into my writing because I know there was a scene in my novel about the my grandfather was coming in and out of a coma, and he imagined the trees and looking up into the trees and then he came back to life. But there was that magical moment of just sort of a scene very similar to what you're sitting in right now with the sun shining above the canopies of the trees or shining through the canopies of the trees. There's not much canopy because of the fall, but maybe there was in my novel. But yeah, I think I use all of that because it's part of me in my writing.
I think that's a beautiful segue and a beautiful vision because in reality, nobody gets out of life unscathed. We all go through traumas, we go through horrible experiences, and we have to look deep within ourselves to find the beauty to go on. Because if we let those traumas and those horrible things beat us down, there's really no life to live. But when you walk out into any natural backdrop, you see that regardless of what's going on, the cycle and the flow continue to move. And it's a beacon, it's a message to each of us to remind us that we can still look inside, we can still look in our hearts, and we can find that rhythm. We can tap back into it and we can continue to go. All those horrible things that we've experienced, they're there as a record to help us appreciate all of the beauty that is truly around us.
Definitely. And I should also add, my family chose to move from Long Island, New York, which probably lacks a lot of nature. It's so overbuilt over there. There's not much left. I could be wrong, but it seems that there's a lot of development there. My family moved to the mountains of Asheville, North Carolina, because we were after I graduated high school, we moved there, and so I have that different perspective from north to south, and also, well, they're in the mountains, so they're North Carolina. I don't know if they're north or south. They're sort of in between, but there's so much nature there, living on the top of a mountain and looking out onto other mountains. It's just so beautiful there. And my family was into country music back in New York, so we were just an odd folks in misplaced a little bit. But my parents lived in North Carolina, and my dad was a blacksmith, and he will be the subject of my next book, A Mighty Arm. At this point, that's the working title. So I'm working on it slowly because I'm freelancing still, but for newspapers and publications. But North Carolina will figure prominently in that next novel too, and just how much he found peace there, and just in nature, away from everyone. So not my choice of lifestyle to be away from everyone. I sort of am a suburban, not too far from a city type of girl, but or just suburban, I should say, but I like a big community nearby. So, but I did live a good chunk of my college lifetime there, so a couple of years, 4 years, until I moved elsewhere.
You hit the nail on the head with another very important point, I think can be a real struggling point, is going somewhere that you're not familiar with, that you don't necessarily feel like you fit in, and learning how to adapt and make it your own. I think that is a beautiful, important thing that a lot of people need to hear, because we get so caught up in our anxieties and our fears, and we almost set our foot on that need to fit in, to be accepted, that it can be very difficult to actually go somewhere and make it your own. Start to build a camp and learn how to live within that space, and then expand it and move your way out of survival mode.
Definitely, definitely. I don't know that I'm a great camper. I had some neuroses about being in the rain and having to go to the bathroom and bears outside when it's dark. So I don't know that I was the greatest camper, but we went through it as a family, and we were committed to getting my son through this process. My husband was convinced that if he became an Eagle Scout, it would make it easier if he was being interviewed by somebody, that they would see that as a little extra over somebody else being interviewed for the job. Unfortunately, the plan was not exactly for him to become an actor and then not need those kind of formal interviews that my husband thought he would have. But I think it did. It does teach you a lot about life and resilience and just being creative out in nature. And he ended up, I think, confidence building was a big thing that he got, to depend on yourself, to be self-reliant. is really important. My grandfather was. I like to think that I am. I do a lot. I can be independent to a point, and then I like to travel with other people. I don't know how good I am traveling by myself, so I lack that. But otherwise, I do a lot by myself, and I'm used to spending a lot of time by myself with my writing. But I do think that you have to depend on yourself, and you have to trust yourself. And with my son, he was the entertainer of the group, but also he was self-confident enough in himself that he wasn't, even as a young person, he wasn't like, where's mom and dad? He was already like, okay, they'll catch up. I don't know where they are. It's okay. So he already had that confidence that can do so much for you in life. And he was a leader in that way. He wasn't exactly what they thought he doesn't fit the picture, maybe the standard for Boy Scout, you know, because he was super confident and more of a leader, but in a different way, more of an entertaining leader, somebody who the other children would go towards, navigate to him. But so he wasn't the standard, but it doesn't matter. You make your own path in life, and I I think that these are good skills. My daughter was a Girl Scout up until a certain point. I was a Girl Scout at a certain point. Just valuable skills that I don't know you can get in any other club. Well, probably there's other, uh, clubs that also are outdoorsy. But this was what we chose for our path and for my son. I hope that it has served us all well to have experienced what it's like to be in nature, and to tie up your we tied up our food in a sack away from bears. So we and you know, I guess we learned how to tie some knots. There's a but I feel like it gives you a leg up in some way to have gone through all the steps that are required for Eagle Scout. And he was also my son was also a scout, Cub Scout leader, or den leader, I guess they call it. So it sets you apart in that you've gone through a lot. There's a lot that you have to go through, that you have to check off the boxes, that you learn certain skills that are so valuable for life in general, and you never know when you're going to need those.
It's exactly it. It really teaches you a lot of the ways of the coyote because it teaches you how to adapt. It teaches you how to persevere, and it teaches you just overall self-confidence. And I think that, that's a beautiful thing that everybody should take a journey upon. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you got to go into the outdoors because we all go on these journeys based off of our hobbies. It's funny because my path to discovering meditation, it was actually a conversation and talk therapy that I argued and didn't buy into until I went out back and I picked up my crossbow and I started shooting and realizing that all those things were in there. And that's one of the most important things I think that anybody can take away from any sort of conversation about trying to find a route for growth and healing is that it's unique to you. You've already got the skills started. So just build onto the foundation and open your heart, open your mind to it. And as we come toward the end of our time, I want you to let people know how they can get a hold of the book and get in touch with you and what you got coming up, all that good stuff.
Okay, so I've got a website, all the fancy stuff at the beginning, HTTPS, www, and then my name, which is also complicated, but it's RONIROBBINS.com, and they can learn more than they ever needed to know about where I'm going to be next. And, I've been doing some touring with the book, and I'm lining up events for next year now. But so if anyone wants me to come and talk to their groups, uh, I mostly talk about the different parts of the book having to do with resilience, and there's romance, there's adventure, there's near-death experiences, there's tragedy, and there's triumph. And so it's very relevant to the world today with wars in Israel and wars in Russia, Ukraine, and healthcare challenges that people are still going through. My grandfather had TB, and tuberculosis is still the largest infectious disease killer in the world. So, as far as they can buy the book on Amazon and everywhere books are sold, so Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Target, Books a Million, and and they can, all of my contact information is on my website. I'm on social media, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. So people can reach out to me any which way that they would like. And I am still freelancing at this point for Medscape WebMD and Atlanta Journal-Constitution as a healthcare reporter. But I'm also trying to write my second book based on my dad's life as a blacksmith, starting out in our garage in New York and ending up with a major business in Asheville, North Carolina, where ships all over the country and all over the world. And he's been written up all in lots of different publications also. So I'm going to start out with my parents' romance this time instead of my grandparents. So I hope that readers will enjoy my story. It's in the Holocaust. The book is in the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. It's been written about in the Jerusalem Post, the Washington Jewish uh, publication. I forget, news, I think. And elsewhere, I've been in book festivals with people like Nikki Haley and Andrew Young, and also Bernie Marcus, who just passed away. I've interviewed him and other celebrities along my way. So I do hope people will look into my background and see that this is a book that's won 6 awards, including international and global book awards. Get a copy of Hands of Gold in your golden hands as soon as you can.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to have this conversation. I really appreciate it. It's been
Thank
fun
you for
to
that.
get the opportunity to get to know you a little bit. I look forward to doing this
Thank
again
you.
sometime down the road.
That would be wonderful. And thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.